Hello there. It's your girl Valerie Mason Chase, and who do I have with me this evening?
You asking me?
Yeah, who you with?
I don't know what you call me. I don't know what you be calling me. I be the cookie man today.
He's the cookie man today. Now, there are other names I call him that,
Mm.
we won't talk about that in public. But anywho, welcome. Thank you guys for joining us this evening, whether you're live or whether you're watching later. So we are back. We were not here for a couple of weeks, maybe 2 or 3 weeks. We went on our family vacation. And what did we do on our vacation, babe?
Slept, ate, had a good time. And I actually had a really good time.
Yeah, we had a really good time. Where did we go? What did we do?
Went on a cruise to the Bahamas on / Nassau, Bahamas. Okay, all right, something like that.
And perfect day in Coco Cay. It was our family vacation.
Yeah.
We take a family vacation every year. This is our first time doing the family vacation on a cruise ship. Frank and I have cruised before, but this was the first time that we've done it as a family, and it was very, very, very enjoyable. We were on the Symphony of the Seas, Royal Caribbean's ship, Symphony of the Seas, that during the late spring and summer months sails out of the port in Bayonne, New Jersey. And we used my sister Sarita Garbarini was our travel agent that helped us organize everything and get everything together. If you follow me on Facebook, you can go to my page and you can see her name, click on it if you need someone to assist you with travel arrangements. So anywho, we're back. And what are we talking about tonight, babe?
Emotional abuse. What do you call it? How do you say it? DARVO?
DARVO.
Okay, DARVO.
And DARVO.
No, I know what the word was.
Yeah, so anywho, we're going to be talking about emotional abuse. We're going to be talking about DARVO. And for those of you who are not sure what DARVO is, we're going to be talking some more about that as well. We'll break it down, what it is, what to look for, the impact it has on an individual, as well as relationships. So tonight we're talking about emotional abuse. So what is emotional abuse? So what it is, it's a pattern of behavior. And the goal of emotional abuse, of the emotional abuser, is to control, manipulate, belittle, and invalidate another person's thoughts, emotions, or their overall sense of self. Now, it's different from physical abuse. Physical abuse can leave physical scars, but emotional abuse, the wounds are internal. It's a wounding of an individual's internal psyche, and it's often subtle. Sometimes it can be overt, but very often the tactics are subtle. Ongoing tactics like gaslighting, like shaming, blame shifting, isolation, and threats.
And those wounds have a tendency to heal, or not heal as quickly, as I should say, as opposed to scars or something, right?
Absolutely. That's the thing about emotional abuse. And that's one of the things that can make healing take longer, because the wounds are not visible. And sometimes the individual is not even aware of how wounded they have been from emotional abuse until they're in another relationship, or when they are interacting with someone they're not in a romantic relationship with, because wounds of emotional abuse can show up in all kinds of relationships, family relationships, friendship relationships, work relationships, all that. Because it like I said, it's invisible, and it erodes the person's identity as well as their confidence. They may not realize that it's happening, and sometimes they don't realize it until the damage is really done and the wounds are really, really deep. So that, in a nutshell, is emotional abuse and how it differs from physical abuse. So, babe, what is this DARVO that we're going to talk about tonight?
Let's
what is DARVO?
see. DARVO is an act. You laughing at me? What?
Got you like a professor. Let me
Okay.
tell y'all something.
Well, anyway, DARVO is an acronym
Mhm.
for manipulative pattern often used by abusers when confronted with their harmful behavior. Deny the behavior. I never did that. Attack the person confronting them. This happens a lot. You're crazy, overly sensitive, or trying to ruin my life, blaming them. RVO, reverse victim offender. You're the one hurting me. I'm the real victim here.
Yeah. And you know something? I'm just going to say this and then I'm going to move on from it. We are witnessing a lot of DARVO politically these days.
I figured that's where you was going.
Yeah. These days we're witnessing a lot of DARVO. We're not going to stay there, but
we won't say where it lives.
We won't say where it lives.
Okay, all right.
Well, no, I ain't going to say where it lives. We, people of color, are experiencing a lot of that DARVO. And if you look at certain podcasts, if you listen to certain news, whatnot, you'll hear it. And again, sometimes it could be subtle, sometimes it's not so subtle. But politically, we are seeing a lot of DARVO.
That's the job. Is it the prosecutor? Always trying to make the victim seem like they're crazy.
Prosecutor does that, yeah.
Right.
You will see it very often. And DARVO, more often than not, will come up during a conflict or during a confrontation, especially when the abuser is confronted by their victim. They'll engage in that DARVO, the D. What are you talking about? I didn't do that. I didn't say that. What are you talking about?
Oh, you misunderstood.
Oh, you misunderstood. That's not. Or here's one of the things I said a lot. That's not what I meant. I didn't mean that. And here's the apology. Well, I'm sorry you feel that way.
Right. I'm sorry if you feel that way.
Yes, I'm sorry if you feel that way. So there's that D. There is denial, and then they attack the other person, saying you're crazy. Why do you feel that way? You're just being sensitive. It ain't that serious. It don't take all that.
I'm hearing all those phrases. Didn't know that it had a word for the phrases like DARVO. Right. But I can remember a lot of those phrases. And a person who's, I guess it comes back to defending your wrong, the things that you did wrong. Yeah. When you're confronted with them, right away you got to defend yourself. And those words sound kind of familiar.
And why don't they sound so familiar, babe?
We won't go there.
No, let's go there.
Well, because I've been known to use a couple of those way back when I didn't know any better.
So then, are you acknowledging that you have engaged in DARVO?
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
And you know something? As quiet as it's kept, I have engaged in DARVO with you as well.
Okay.
We both have engaged in that behaviors. Yeah.
Right, and I think that can definitely happen when you're in a long-term relationship. Yeah. Some of these things are gonna come up. They're gonna show themselves.
Yeah.
You can be overly sensitive to something, or I can feel like I'm being attacked, so I want to turn it around.
Yeah, but here's the thing I have to ask about that. Is there really such a thing as being overly sensitive? I don't know. I'm just asking the question because I think there's something to be said on both sides of that equation. I don't know. And if whomever is here listening, what are your thoughts? Do you think that there is such a thing as being overly sensitive? I don't know. But DARVO is effective because of the way in which it targets the other person. It causes them to question truth. It causes them to question about trust and their own identity. They start to question themselves. It undermines the victim's perception of reality. They begin to question whether the abuse even happened. That's a lot of gaslighting. Yeah, that's so bad, yeah. DARVO and gaslighting go hand in hand. The attack activates fear, shame, and guilt. And what can end up happening there is once that occurs, the victim becomes reluctant
to speak up.
They don't want to say anything,
right,
because now they've been made to feel ashamed. Now they're feeling guilty, and they're questioning. Sometimes they question their own sanity. Did I really hear that? Did he really say? Did I really see that? You remember that old song? Who was it? Bismarck. He said it wasn't me. Was that?
Oh, I don't know if it was Bismarck.
I don't know who it was. I don't know. But somebody said it wasn't me.
Right.
I saw you in the corner. It wasn't me. I saw you over there. It wasn't me. And DARVO kind of
touched your shoulder. No, it wasn't mine.
I saw your car. It wasn't my car. Even though I know your license plate and I know your vehicle, you start to question all of that. And the role reversal. Yeah, go ahead, baby.
Could that person that's questioning all these things, you saw all the things you mentioned, could it also, could something of a lack of esteem I think you mentioned that, factors in there for them to be so doubtful of themselves because they have lack of esteem?
Yes. And when DARVO is emotional abuse accompanied by DARVO is taking place, of course, it's going to result in the victim of all of it starting to have lower self-esteem, because you do start to question who you are. And it will erode it. It definitely can erode self-esteem when someone is experiencing emotional abuse accompanied by DARVO, because that role reversal is very disorienting when you know that you are a victim, but the perpetrator is trying to convince you that they are the victim. It's disorienting. It's disorienting. You become discombobulated by that, and then there's the potential of now you're trying to defend yourself when you haven't done anything wrong, when you're the victim and you're trying to defend yourself against the perpetrator and prove that you are not the aggressor when you in fact are the victim. So there's a lot of stuff that goes on with emotional abuse and DARVO.
I don't know. This thought popped in my head. With that lack of esteem, can't that person, can I feel attacked upon even though I haven't done anything because of your lack?
But if you are engaging in emotional abuse, you done something.
But what if I'm not? But
emotional abuse is something, babe.
I know that.
But if you are engaging, if you are emotionally abusing your partner, you are doing something.
Well, if
I think you're asking. I think you're wanting to ask a different question.
Possibly.
Okay. Can I help you with that?
Sure, baby. Why not?
I think what you want to ask is, let's say hypothetically, emotional abuse has been going on, and the victim has been the recipient of the emotional abuse. It has resulted in them being extremely insecure and doubting themselves. So they may think that their partner is doing something, not emotionally abusing them. They may think that their partner is doing something that they are not, in fact, doing. Is that the question that you want to ask?
Kind of, sort of, because I was looking at it from a perspective. My point of view is, I'm when it says I'm trying to turn around and make it seem like I'm the victim,
right?
But here I am the victim because you're attacking me. You're accusing me of stuff that I haven't done. I haven't even been emotionally abusive or physically abusive to you, but because of what you brought to the relationship,
yes,
I do feel attacked.
Okay, but that is an entirely different scenario.
That's a different podcast.
That is entirely different. See, we are talking about we will address that, son. We'll go back over it. You're talking about an entirely different scenario. For the purposes of this conversation, we are discussing when emotional abuse is really taking place, when it is happening, when DARVO is present.
Okay. So I guess I should get up a little early from my nap before work and read the text so I could ask the right questions. That's what you're saying, right?
Not in so many words, but Jono was asking what the DARVO tactic. So tell him again.
John, let me read
it again. What DARVO is.
DARVO is an acronym for manipulative pattern often used by abusers when confronted with their harmful behavior. Deny the behavior.
No, say the D is for.
Oh, excuse me.
D is for deny.
DARVO. D is for deny the behavior. I or she never did that. I said I or she, but
that's okay, baby. We understand. We know you're special.
Oh wow. A is for attack the person confronting them. You're crazy, overly sensitive, or trying to ruin my life. RVO, reverse victim and offender. You're the one hurting me. I am the real victim here.
Yeah. So you get it now, Jono, DARVO. It's just an acronym. DARVO. Deny, attack, reverse, victim, and offender. And as I said, there is some of that going on politically nowadays. But in this conversation, we're talking about how DARVO shows up in emotionally abusive relationships. It can also show up in physically abusive relationships, because sometimes when the physical abuse occurs, the offender attempts to minimize the physical abuse and can say, well, I didn't punch you. I just shoved you. I just put you up against that. What are you talking about? I didn't hurt you.
Because you can't have physical abuse and not emotional abuse. I think it could work the other way. You can't have emotional abuse
without the physical abuse. Absolutely. But physical abuse, emotional abuse, they definitely go hand. I gotta turn this fan around some people. I'm hot. Go ahead. Definitely go hand in hand. I gotta just give me a whiff of it. All right. So
physically abusing me.
Stop it. So anywho, what DARVO does, it reinforces that cycle of psychological invalidation, and it contributes to some things that show up in the victim. It contributes to self-doubt. We were kind of talking about that before, because the abuser just flat out denies any wrongdoing and then attacks the victim. And as I said, the survivor or the recipient of the emotional abuse accompanied by DARVO, they begin to question their perceptions and ask, maybe I am overreacting. Maybe he or she is right, that this is not as big of a deal as I think it is. Gaslighting and DARVO, I said earlier, I'm going to say it again, they go hand in hand. Denial and role reversal, it results in distorting the survivor's sense of reality, creating a version of events that serves the abuser. The abuser creates a series of events that serves them and disorients the victim. See how my glasses are fogging up? I'm hot. I need to turn this fan around. I'm sorry, babe. I know it kind of bothers your eyes a little bit, but just look at my glasses. Look how my glasses are. I can't read without them. I can't read without
my contacts.
What contacts, right?
I said, okay. I can't read without my glasses, so I just put them on, read, take them off.
Okay.
Put them on, read, take them off.
I can't do that.
Why?
Because you don't really need reading glasses. I really need reading glasses.
Okay.
You have your contacts in.
Right.
Hold on. Let me finish. Let me finish.
Excuse us. Go ahead.
Okay. You have in your contacts that are your glasses you wear for distance.
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
So that's why you need the reading.
Right.
Let me finish.
Go ahead.
You need the reading glasses to read up close.
Okay.
I don't need contacts for distance. I had cataract surgery that corrected that.
Okay.
However, I do need glasses to read, whether I'm reading it on paper or if I take my glasses off, all that is a blur.
Okay.
I can't see anything.
So here's what I was trying to say, baby. While you're not reading, take them off. That'll give them time.
But even if I look at the screen, I can't see. I'm a blur to myself on the screen. You are a blur. I can't read anybody's comments because it's all a blur. Why are you laughing at me? That's not funny.
Because you know what we look like. You don't need to see us.
But I do need to see the comments. That's using DARVO. Right. There you go. That's right, son. You checking him. What did people say? You clocking him? You reading him or something like that?
You checking him.
So you made me totally forget where I was and what I was talking about.
Okay,
so, well,
you want to gas?
No, I was already talking about gaslighting and something else that DARVO can contribute to is something that is known as learned helplessness. And we're going to talk some more about that later. But over time, if every attempt to speak up leads to more blame, more criticism, or emotional withdrawal, the survivor may stop trying altogether. They begin to feel that no action they take will lead to safety or to clarity, and they emotionally shut down. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that learned helplessness a little bit later. But when we are speaking about survivors who have experienced emotional abuse accompanied by DARVO, there could be some long-term mental health impacts, such as what?
Take that. Okay, I got it. I see. I put my glasses on. Complex PTSD, including emotional flashback, hypervigilance, emotional numbing, and difficulty in trusting others.
Yes.
Okay.
When you have experienced emotional abuse, particularly accompanied by DARVO, PTSD or complex PTSD, and some of the symptoms of those were is what the Cookie Man just read. So when you experience it, especially over a long period of time, it can result in PTSD or CPTSD. It can also result in depression. And that can stem from ongoing internalized blame, a sense of hopelessness and isolation, because abusers sometimes one of their methods to maintain the abuse and control, because abuse is always about control, is to isolate their victims. So what are some other potential long-term impacts?
Well, you have anxiety disorders, particularly social anxiety or generalized anxiety, due to fear of confrontation or being disbelieved.
Exactly. The one who has experienced emotional abuse accompanied by DARVO, sometimes they're not so inclined to go out in social settings. Who's going to believe them? Who can they talk to? Who can they trust? They've gotten to a place where they don't trust anybody. They don't even trust themselves in social situations sometimes. We have talked about low self-esteem, a persistent sense that something is wrong with me, shaped by years of denial and blame.
That anxiety disorders can then, if it's long-term, can lead to self-harm.
It could, but I think depression also has that potential.
Well, yeah, when you put it all together,
that has that potential as well. And something else that long-term emotional abuse accompanied by DARVO can result in is what?
Okay. Did you point to that because you wanted me to read that?
Look, I can't take him nowhere, y'all.
Rational trauma. Relational trauma. Survivors may struggle with intimacy, assertiveness, and boundaries in future relationships.
Absolutely.
Yeah. People have a tendency to bring that into a new relationship, and then everyone's feeling stressed and all kind of stuff going on.
Yeah. Just because the emotionally abusive relationship ends, the impact or long-lasting effect of the emotional abuse doesn't end with the relationship. Especially if the person doesn't seek to get any help. If you get help, of course, you have a greater potential of not carrying that over into another relationship. So for those who may have just joined, we're talking about emotional abuse and DARVO. DARVO, which we said is what? Deny. You deny the behavior.
I forget the acronym, yeah.
Deny, attack, and reverse victim and offender.
Okay.
You deny, the perpetrator is in denial of what's going on. They attack the person who was confronting them, who they have been abusing, and then they reverse victim and offender, try to make themselves out to be the victim as opposed to the person that they have been abusing all along.
Okay.
So what advice to give to someone who might begin to recognize that they're being darvoed? I don't know if that's really a word, but that's the word that I'm going to use. So
that's the Hood dictionary.
Yeah. Hood dictionary got a whole lot of words that were never initially part of the English language, right? Like conversate. How many times did we in the hood say conversate?
We conversating with each other.
We conversating, not realizing that that's not a real word. However, it's in the dictionary now. This is just an aside. I'm really not in favor of something like that, because you are validating the improper use of the English language.
But see, I'm on the other spectrum. It's okay when you're amongst each other, so to speak, or you're in the hood.
Yeah.
As long as you know when you go somewhere out there might be a better way to communicate.
Yes,
now it doesn't always happen, but let's face it. Do we always have the proper language or put word pronunciation when we're in here with the kids and we just hanging out with each other? Yeah, no, we all right.
I understand that, honey, but unfortunately, when the improper use of the English language is validated, some people never learn that it is incorrect, and they use it beyond just in the house. I get it. I talk Ebonics too. I can speak Ebonics with the best of them. I get it, but we need to know how to quote unquote code switch.
Okay.
And we need to know when we're speaking properly and when we're not speaking properly, and to know the difference, know when and when not to. And unfortunately, so many people, but they don't know.
Well,
they don't know.
Someone's got to teach them.
Yeah, but and unfortunately, you know something? I hear teachers say conversate. Educators, I hear say they conversating. Woo! Help us, Lord. But anywho, I did say that was an aside. Okay. We're going to get back to what we're talking about. So what advice would you give someone who begins to recognize that they are darvoed?
Okay, first, trust that recognition is powerful. If you're beginning to identify DARVO, you're already taking the first critical step, breaking through the gaslighting.
Absolutely. That's the first step. When you begin to recognize it. Recognition is powerful. But that's just the first step in recognizing it. So here's some things that the individual can potentially do next. Go ahead.
But for a person to start recognizing this, there has to be some healing going on.
Not necessarily, because you may not be able to put a name to it.
Right.
You may not be able to say that this is DARVO, but you can recognize that something is amiss, something's awry, something's not right. This relationship is chaotic, it's toxic, it's emotionally painful. So you may not have the language to say that it is DARVO, but you can still recognize that it's being done without labeling it.
I didn't mean to imply that they knew the acronym of what was going on. They just, with the healing, they realized, hey, something's crazy about this relationship.
Yeah, you realize it more as you start to heal.
Well, yeah.
But even before you heal, sometimes you know that something's wrong with this relationship. You know that something is not right. You don't have the ego strength to necessarily do anything about it initially, but you can sense, most of us, I'm just going to say this, most of us know when we are not being treated properly. Most of us know when we are not being validated. Most of us know when we are not receiving love or respect or kindness. Now, are there individuals who can't recognize it? Absolutely. But I think for the most part, most of us, we know when we're not being treated right, but we don't always speak on it. We don't always act on it. We don't say anything about it. But I think we can identify it. What do you think?
I would say yes. I had a thought while you were speaking. You know, some people will recognize it and don't speak on it based on their circumstance. What I mean by that, you can have someone in a relationship and that is their security blanket. They don't want to upset that apple cart, so they just kind of just go along with the program.
Yeah, but that's part of the abuse.
Well,
that's part of the effects of the abuse.
But you say that's part of the abuse. But what if
part of the effects of the abuse?
The abuse. Okay, I'm starting to say, but what if the guy's just going to work doing, but not doing anything abusive?
No, but you're talking about the victim just going along and not saying anything.
Okay, got it. Yeah,
if of course the perpetrator is not going to say anything. They don't want to get called out on their abuse, whether it's emotional, physical, financial, spiritual. There are all types of abuse. Today we happen to be talking about emotional abuse and DARVO. So some of the things that a person can do if they suspect that they're being DARVO'd, or if they see some of those things and they don't know that it's DARVO, but what you can do, first you just pause, take a moment, breathe, and consider saying to yourself, what I felt and experienced is valid, even if he or she denies it. Because that's one of the things that they do. They deny.
Of course.
The emotional abuser will deny. So when you can kind of come to yourself, you can have that conversation. What I experienced is real. You could document what happened. Journaling is a magnificent tool. You write down what was said. You can journal. You could do voice recordings because you want to validate what happened in your own words. Listen, you don't need anybody's permission to name your truth. You don't need the perpetrator's permission to name your truth. You have that look on your face like you want to say something.
Yeah, because I was thinking this might sound off a little bit. But can a person who's committing emotional abuse because he or she had been so emotionally abused themselves, not even recognize what they're doing to their person partner in a relationship, because this is what they know.
That's possible.
So now everybody's messed up. You don't want to speak on not being treated right. I think from what I've learned or what I've done, it was learned behavior because it was done to me. So I'm just living my life the way I know it, the way I grew up in. I don't even realize what I'm doing is a mess.
I get that.
But
A, that doesn't make it right.
Okay.
B, again, at some point, as we are growing and we are learning and we are interacting with one another, there are signs, there are signals, there are red flags all being waved all over the place. Even when someone has been the victim of abuse. And you're saying that individual has now become an abuser,
essentially,
and he or she doesn't recognize that they are an abuser.
Yeah, it's not something physical.
No, but I gotta challenge that.
Wait, because I was trying to say it's not something physical. You could definitely see physical, more so than subtle emotional abuse.
Right.
What's challenge? Go ahead.
Here's why I have to challenge that. Because that individual knows that they were abused. They experienced it. They know that they were abused. They know that something was wrong in their family of origin or in a past relationship. They know that they experienced abuse. What happens very often is when there is abuse, especially in your family of origin, when you were a child, more often than not, the individual will say, well, I'm never going to do that. I don't want anybody else to experience what I'm experiencing. But if we don't get help, we end up repeating the pattern. So it isn't that they don't know. They recognize it. They may not want to acknowledge that they are continuing the cycle of abuse because they had said many years ago, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to be like my father. I'm not going to be like my mother. I'm not going to be like this individual who abused me physically, emotionally, sexually, or in other ways. So they know what it is. And when they continue the cycle by now becoming the perpetrator, when before they were the victim, there is some level of awareness there. They may be in denial of it, and they may not want to hear it when their partner points it out. And that's where DARVO comes in. When your partner says to you, babe, you know, you're being emotionally abusive to me. That language that you're using is abusive. They are, the victim is confronting the perpetrator, and now the perpetrator what? Denies.
First thing I'm gonna say,
no, I'm not.
Since I haven't fully recognized or acknowledged it, I'm gonna deny it.
Right. Even if you do recognize it in yourself,
well,
you don't want to admit that
sure,
you're doing it.
Sure.
So you deny. What are you talking about? I didn't do that. I'm not abusing you. And then we go on with the DARVO. You know, attack, reverse victim, and offender. So document what happened, journal, voice recordings, whatever, just to an attempt at reorienting yourself back to what you know is reality, because the perpetrator of DARVO is going to want to keep you off kilter. They're going to want you discombobulated. They're going to want you wondering and thinking if you are crazy or not. And again, you don't need their permission to name your truth. What else?
Okay, where we at? Okay, wrote that. Don't argue with the pattern. Trying to prove,
quote unquote,
right? The abuse in the moment usually leads to further denial or attack. Instead, focus on protecting your clarity, not convincing the abuser.
Yes. So if you do say something and the perpetrator denies and goes through the whole spiel with DARVO, don't argue with them. Don't argue, because that is only going to make it worse. And now you've become back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And it's nothing's going to get accomplished, and it's exhausting.
That is difficult when you're having a conversation, if you want to call that a conversation, not to just say what you have to say and not to have that back and forth going on. That can be difficult, I think.
Well, for some people. For some people.
Yeah, really. Yeah. Okay. Well,
no,
yeah.
But seriously,
yeah.
I know that it can be difficult. However, arguing with the person, yes, you did. No, I didn't. Yes, you did. This is how. No, I didn't. What's wrong with you? You crazy. That's not. What does that accomplish? The issue for so many couples, they have this dynamic of wanting to win. You want to win the argument. You want to prove your point. Well, if you win, everybody loses, because the goal should never be about winning an argument, but coming to an understanding. That's the goal. Not try to prove your point. You try to prove he's wrong. She tries to prove that he's wrong. Go ahead. I see that look on your face.
No, I could.
You see how well I know him? I see that look, and I can't read what's going across his head, but I know something's in there.
Dynamics where, and it's again saying it's not easy trying to get the person you're having a conversation with to see your point of view.
Right.
And then when that person says, you know, it's okay, I don't have to say, no, you need to see it my way. Because using myself for an example, more times than not, I feel you better understand what I'm saying when you kind of agree with me, I guess is a better. But I realize
so you want agreement.
You don't have to agree with me, but a lot of times I feel like you're not listening or understanding what I'm saying when you're kind of like, okay, I heard you, babe, you know.
But I don't agree. Agreement and understanding are not the same thing. And agreement is not always the goal of a conversation with a couple. You don't always have to agree. There are going to be many things within the context of a relationship, especially in a marriage that is long-term. There are going to be a whole lot of things that you all don't agree on.
Yeah, I get that.
So that's not the goal in every conversation. got to be about coming to an understanding. I get what you're saying, babe. I don't agree with you. I don't have to agree with you because sometimes your point is just as valid as mine. Right, it's not about who's right and who's wrong. Sometimes we're both right, and maybe sometimes we're both wrong. But who cares? If I can understand, at that moment I kill. Yeah, I know you do, and then you get pissed off at me. Yeah. When I just say, okay, babe, I get you. I don't agree, but I get you.
Well, the other part about it in a conversation, sometimes it can get real in depth and really emotional conversation. But I always use this terminology: a conversation is like a tree and roots. You see the tree growing straight up, but underneath those roots are spreading out, so you never know how the conversation is going to go when it starts, and to then to always try to say,
let's stay on point.
Bring here, but that is the conversation is the point, and it's taking us here.
But sometimes that defeats the purpose of the conversation. Because now it's become tangential. Now you've gone off on this tangent. We're supposed to be talking about this mouse, and we end up talking about the pen. So the issue revolving around the mouse is never resolved.
No, we can come back to that.
We never come to an understanding about the mouse because we spent 20 minutes talking about the pen. So that's why, from my perspective, let's reel it in. Let's focus on where we're focused. Let's talk about this. Let's finish this conversation. And then if you want to talk about the pen, I'm all for it. We can talk about the pen, the pencil, the magic marker, or whatever. But the point is to not go off on tangents. And so many times that happens with couples when you're starting a conversation, and you start here and you end up over there, and you never ever conclude from where you started out. So that's why I don't like this whole tree and root and branches and all that whatnot. I don't like that.
That's a nice way to put it, though, right?
Well, for you, it does work for me.
You can't even agree with me on that.
Okay. It's a nice metaphor.
Oh, there you go.
Okay. It is a nice metaphor, but I'm not so sure. And again, this is just my perspective and opinion. I'm not so sure that it is a healthy way to engage in a conversation, to start here and then you're off there, and then you're off there, and then you're off there. But here is never resolved.
Well, I get that if that's how it's always done, but sometimes you have to allow the conversation to go and be intentional to let it go for a little while, because it could be a necessary thing for one or the other person. And
how so? Give me an example, because I don't see that.
I just tell you, sometimes just let me talk. Wherever I'm going, let me talk.
Yeah, but then again, what you have brought into the conversation, we spend time talking about that, as opposed to where the focus was in the beginning. Okay, but anyhow, we done gone way off. I know. We just did what I said I don't like doing. See? Ain't that a boogie woogie? See? Ain't that about a boogie woogie?
You just gotta go.
And let's get back to the
conversation. Now come back. Here we are. We're coming back. Okay.
Oh my God. So we talked about we were talking about what to do if you realize you're in an emotionally abusive relationship, particularly when DARVO has been taking place. We talked about kind of grounding yourself. We talked about documenting what happened, either with journaling, or you could do voice recordings or whatever. We talked about don't argue with the person, because you're just going to kind of go back and forth. You can also seek validation from safe people. That's why it is so important to have a safe network of individuals, to have support people that you can trust, that are trustworthy, because they can help shed some light on what you are experiencing, especially if they witness it. Your support person, it could be a therapist. You could go for counseling. But what you don't want to do is isolate yourself.
Right.
You don't want to isolate yourself, because that is a weapon of an abuser. What else? What should they remember?
Okay. Being accused doesn't make you guilty.
Right.
DARVO works by flipping roles. Don't internalize shame that doesn't belong to you.
Exactly. When you're an emotional abuser, if they're trying to blame you, if they're blame shifting, if they're trying to blame, they're trying to shame, they're trying to do all those things, don't take on shame or blame. That's not yours to carry.
I have to ask you this question. When it says, where was I just at? Hold on.
This one?
Yeah. No.
Oh, being accused doesn't make you guilty?
Right. It doesn't make you guilty.
Right.
So how would a person handle it? You're being accused.
Now, are you talking about the perpetrator or the victim? Because remember, with DARVO, we're talking about the victim.
Right.
Who is being attacked and accused.
Okay.
Because that reverse victim
Right,
offender.
I guess what I was doing was reversing. I was like, the victim is accusing me of something.
The victim is accusing you of being emotionally abusive because you have been. Okay. And
okay, all right, I'll leave that.
When you get to the RVO, the reverse victim and offender, now the perpetrator is going to come back. Let's say it's me, is going to come back at me and tell me, no, I'm the guilty party. But just because the perpetrator is accusing me of something doesn't mean that I'm guilty of it.
Got it. Okay.
Right.
Understood.
Okay.
Okay.
Something else you could do is take back your decision making power. And it could start with small things. Start making some decisions on your own. What you're going to eat, where you're going to go, who you're going to spend time with, what you believe. Each decision is a step towards reclaiming your agency, because that's another thing abusers like to do, is take away that decision-making power from their victims. You can also rebuild. Yep. You can also rebuild some body awareness.
Okay.
With the therapist. You can engage in a therapeutic modality known as EMDR. We talked about EMDR before, that focuses on trauma. So you can work with a therapist, a trauma-informed therapist. You can engage in some mindfulness. You could do some breath work. There are some somatic activities you can engage in. So I would encourage someone who does become aware that they are experiencing emotional abuse in their relationships to seek help, to get help from a therapist. A therapist can help you navigate through all of that. A therapist can help you to identify, name, and call out some of the things that you are experiencing, can help you to build up your self-esteem in a way that you are able to confront and not necessarily back down. And sometimes you may need the ego strength to leave the relationship, especially if y'all ain't married. If this is just a boyfriend and you are in an emotionally abusive relationship, sometimes the best answer is to get out of the relationship. So work with a trauma-informed professional, because if you want to heal from it, it more often than not requires ongoing guidance and some consistent validation. And if you're a therapist, you want to provide some psychoeducation for your client, educate them about emotional abuse, educate them about DARVO, use real life examples, use metaphors, use diagrams, do all of that. You want to monitor for power imbalances in a session, whether it's an individual session, and especially if it's a couple session. You want to look for imbalances of power when you are sitting with the client or with the couple. And some of the things you want to look for: if one partner is consistently denying responsibility, if one partner consistently attacks the other or plays the victim when they are confronted, especially with those behaviors. Also with couples, what else can you do, baby?
Okay. Practice Lord have mercy.
Reflective.
I know the word, honey.
Oh, okay.
I took a moment to laugh at you.
Why you laughing at me? What'd I do?
Because you act like it's so hot over here.
Honey.
Practice reflective
You have been
listening.
living with a menopausal woman for the last since 2009. What year is this? No, since 2019. No. What year is it? 25?
Wait a minute.
No, since
Are you trying to say when you started having these menopausal flashes?
Yes.
Oh.
I've been menopausal since 2009.
Okay.
What year is this?
Seems like, well, it's 2025.
Yeah, it's been a long time. But anywho, go ahead.
Well, that tree again. Okay. Practice reflective listening. Create a safe space where one's partner shares a hurt without interruption, and the other simply reflects back what they've heard without defensiveness or shifting blame.
Yes, that's very important when when you're engaging in couples counseling. You know, listen, if couples now there are occasions when I will allow a certain level of bickering or argument because I want to see how they fight. But after that, if you want to fight, you want to bicker, you want to do all that, you can do that outside of session. Okay? Because if you're coming into a session and you're just going to bicker and fight, we're not getting to any resolutions. We're not figuring out next steps or what we need to do. There's a place for the little bickering. There's a place for some level of being argumentative, just to see how the couples fight, because couples fight in a typical way. All couples have a way in which they fight, and it just goes through their relationship. It doesn't matter what they're fighting about. They have a set pattern how they fight. Do you know what our pattern is? We'll talk about it later. But every couple has one. Why are you laughing?
No, because I'm just visualizing that and trying to pinpoint the patterns. How one of us might, you know what? Just throw up the hands. Don't want to feed back into it because it'll keep going. I want it to end as quickly as possible. Yeah. It's in therapy we call it a dance. Every couple has their dance that they do in their relationship. You have an avoider, you have a pursuer, you have one who shuts down, you have someone who may be aggressive, someone who attacks, someone retreats. But there is a pattern that every couple has when they are engaging in conflict or they are having an argument. So, anywho, so we talked about emotional abuse. We talked about DARVO, which is an acronym for deny a behavior, to attack. The perpetrator attacks the victim. Then reverse, victim and offender. The perpetrator tries to paint themselves as the victim and tries to paint the victim as the perpetrator. So if you see that in your relationship, whether it's a romantic relationship, a friendship relationship, a family relationship, or a co-worker relationship, just be mindful of it. Look for those signs that show up and be aware of how you can be negatively impacted when that shows up. Just because you're in an abusive relationship, just because you are in a toxic relationship, doesn't mean that you have to remain the victim, because there's help out there for you with counseling, with coaching, with a strong support network of friends who will be there for you. There's help out there. So I just want to encourage, if you feel that you're experiencing it, or if you know someone who's experiencing it, you can be aware that there's help available, and you can also share with your friend, family member, or whomever that there is help available. What do you have to say, babe? You ready to go? Yeah, I'm ready to go.
You ready to go? I know that look too. See, after so many years, there's a certain look on his face, and we have learned to read each other over the years. I'm not always right. He's not always right, but definitely. So I want to thank you all who have listened. Some have been in and out. Some may listen later. I just want to encourage. What do you do on YouTube? Subscribe and like and share. Subscribe and like and share. Subscribe and like and share. And it's Marriage Beyond the Breach. You can find us on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram, and I'm kind of sort of on TikTok. I have a TikTok, but I really don't do a whole lot of posting on TikTok. I share a lot of videos, but I don't. No, I repost a lot, but I don't necessarily post a lot of my own. But I want to thank you again, and I want to encourage you to come back again next week. Next week, we're going to be talking about self-care. So we have some wonderful presenters who are going to be on to talk about self-care, which is a necessary component for mental and physical health. I'll see you all next time. Oh, there you are with those deuces. He drives me crazy with those deuces.
Bring him back, Don.
Bye, y'all. I'll see you next time.